In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delivers a detailed and forceful analysis of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran, highlighting Israel's overwhelming military success and President Donald Trump's strategic diplomatic maneuvers. The discussion also touches on recent political violence in the United States, media reactions, and the broader geopolitical implications of the Middle East crisis. Shapiro opens by emphasizing the scale and effectiveness of Israel's offensive against Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. Contrary to some media portrayals suggesting a balanced conflict, Shapiro argues that Israel is decisively dismantling Iran's military capabilities. He compares the situation to a mismatch between a heavyweight champion and a much weaker opponent, with Israel playing the role of Mike Tyson and Iran as a deranged leprechaun. Israel has reportedly destroyed up to 90% of Iran's nuclear capacity, including key facilities like Natanz and Isfahan, and has taken out about one-third of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. The Iranian air defenses have been rendered ineffective, allowing Israeli F-35s and F-16s to conduct continuous sorties over Iranian airspace without opposition. Despite this, the Iranian nuclear facility at Fordo remains a significant challenge due to its deep underground location, encased in reinforced concrete and situated 90 meters beneath a mountain. Shapiro explains that even the most powerful bunker-busting munitions, such as the U.S. GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, may not be sufficient to destroy Fordo completely. This has led to speculation that either Iran will be forced to relinquish Fordo voluntarily, or Israel, possibly with U.S. assistance, will have to conduct a specialized raid or airstrike to neutralize it. Iran's response to Israel's attacks has been to launch hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones into Israeli population centers, deliberately targeting civilians rather than military sites. This tactic, Shapiro notes, starkly contrasts with Israel's precision strikes on military and nuclear targets. The missile attacks have caused casualties and damage in Israel, but the death toll remains relatively low compared to the destruction inflicted on Iran's military infrastructure. Israel's extensive civil defense preparations, including hardened buildings and bomb shelters, have mitigated the impact on its civilian population. A significant portion of the podcast focuses on President Donald Trump's role in the conflict, which Shapiro characterizes as masterful 4D chess. Trump is portrayed as the good cop in a geopolitical game where Israel acts as the bad cop. While Israel aggressively dismantles Iran's nuclear and military capabilities, the United States maintains a posture of diplomatic pressure, urging Iran to come to the negotiating table and abandon its nuclear ambitions. Trump's strategy involves leveraging Israel's military actions to weaken Iran without direct U.S. military involvement, thereby avoiding American casualties and regional escalation. At the same time, Trump keeps all options open, including the possibility of U.S. airstrikes on deeply buried nuclear sites like Fordo if Iran refuses to negotiate. This approach has reportedly brought Iran to the brink, with Tehran signaling a willingness to resume talks under certain conditions, such as the U.S. refraining from direct attacks. Shapiro highlights Trump's previous successes in the Middle East, including the Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states. He credits Trump with fundamentally reshaping the region's geopolitical landscape and argues that the current campaign against Iran's nuclear program is a continuation of that legacy. Trump's insistence on America first is defended against critics who accuse him of abandoning this principle by supporting Israel's offensive. Shapiro and Senator Tom Cotton, who joins the discussion, both affirm that preventing a nuclear Iran is essential to maintaining peace and security, and that Trump's policies reflect this reality. The podcast features an interview with Amit Seagal, chief political analyst for Israel's Channel 12 News, who corroborates Shapiro's assessment of Israel's military dominance. Seagal uses a soccer analogy to describe Israel's lead in the conflict, suggesting that Iran's remaining options are limited to inflicting civilian casualties rather than achieving any strategic victory. He notes that the elimination of Iran's top nuclear scientists and military leaders has severely crippled the regime's capabilities. Seagal also discusses the psychological and political impact on Iran, pointing out that the regime is isolated and vulnerable, with little external support. He expresses skepticism about Iran's willingness to negotiate, given the hardline stance of its leadership, but acknowledges that the regime's survival depends on ending the conflict soon. Senator Tom Cotton echoes these views, praising Israel's precision strikes and the U.S. support that has helped Israel establish air superiority and degrade Iran's missile capabilities. Cotton emphasizes the importance of closing key nuclear sites to prevent Iran from retaining any enrichment capacity. He also criticizes isolationist voices on the right who oppose Trump's support for Israel, arguing that their stance undermines the America First principle by allowing a nuclear Iran to threaten global security. Shapiro shifts focus to a tragic domestic incident involving the shooting of two Minnesota state legislators and their spouses. The suspect, a 57-year-old man with a complex personal history and signs of mental instability, was apprehended after a two-day manhunt. Shapiro contrasts the widespread condemnation of this attack on Democratic lawmakers with the troubling support and glorification that some left-wing figures have shown for other politically motivated acts of violence, such as the murder of a healthcare CEO. Brandon Blackburn, a former CIA counterterrorism officer, joins the conversation to provide insight into the manhunt and the broader issue of political violence. Blackburn stresses that mental illness is often a root cause of such attacks and warns against the dangerous escalation of incendiary rhetoric and implicit incitement by public figures. He calls for greater responsibility from both the media and political leaders to reduce tribalistic divisions and prevent further violence. The discussion also touches on the suspect's use of a police disguise to gain access to his victims, raising questions about security protocols for public officials. Blackburn advocates for improved communication between law enforcement and the public to enhance safety and awareness. Throughout the episode, Shapiro critiques various media narratives and political reactions to the Middle East conflict and domestic violence. He condemns Democratic politicians who call for more sanctions instead of supporting Israel's military actions, labeling such positions as naive and ineffective. He also ridicules suggestions from some on the left that China should broker peace in the Middle East, pointing out the geopolitical absurdity of relying on a hostile regime for mediation. On the right, Shapiro addresses criticism from figures like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who accuse Trump of betraying America First by backing Israel. Shapiro defends Trump as the true architect of the America First movement and MAGA, dismissing these critics as disconnected from reality. He highlights Trump's consistent stance against a nuclear Iran and his efforts to maintain peace through strength.